Okay, let's dive into chapter 14, the Asian tree warblers, Iduna, referred to as the tree warblers. And we're going to focus particularly on the milky tea ones, the booted warbler and the Sykes' warbler. Thank you, Gary Taylor, who was in on finding this bird, which is a Sykes' warbler on Fula. And he's provided some fantastic photographs. Now, how do you dive into this subject? Well, what do you think this one is? It's facing away from you. It's the great colour milky tea, as it's called. And could you identify it on this view? I would say that's a pretty straightforward Sykes' warbler. And the reason being that I would be focusing on the tertials here. And then I'd also kind of notice a bit of the supercilium here. But I think this is a pretty helpful feature, both the colour, the lack of contrast, and also they look a bit raggedy around the edges. I'll explain a bit more in a minute. Here's a booted warbler, courtesy of Stephen Menzies. Typically booted, they have a supercilium that extends, it's broad, and it goes well past the eye. It's kind of a beefy super at the bottom of the bill. Often has a pretty obvious dark smudge here. And in their tertials of a booted, you get nice contrast with darker centres and pretty obvious pale fringes. Here's another booted warbler. Colour tones are a wee bit different, but still nice supercilium going well behind the eye. Nice dark eye ridge. Pretty prominent dark mark on the lower mandible. And looking overall, particularly, the most important thing is their jizz. Nearly forgot to say that. Where they look more like a leaf warbler, Philosopher's warbler. Not too kind of long and stretched out, whereas the Sylvias look more like an acrocephalus warbler, a reed warbler type shape. Here's another booted warbler, a bit of a funny angle, but there's that long supercilium, dark ridge, and a bit of a darker bill tip as well. And there is a slight difference, a bit like the lesser white throats, in the wing formula. And you can see Ray's drawing, get more information in a chapter on that. And here's a stunning Sykes, one of Gary Taylor's. Look at the bill on that. It's a monster. And on average, the Sykes tend to have an obviously longer bill. And it also, the oranginess tends to creep more into the upper mandible. So the whole bill looks more orangey. And any dark near the lower mandible is a little bit less obvious. Again, more of a peaked crown, like a reed warbler type bird. And just an overall longer kind of looking jizz to it. Here's one that I had a fantastic time with on Fetler in Shetland a few years ago. Again, notice some of the features. The supercilium doesn't extend a long way behind the eye, but is very restricted to just above and over the eye. That long orangey bill. Now, here's a really interesting thing. No contrast, like that booted warbler in the tertials. Look very plain and also raggedy. This is really interesting because it seems almost like a feature of rads that they turn up as vagrants and they look worn. And it must be some factor of their weather or their journey or their breeding timing. Young Sykeses also tend to have quite a gingery hue to them, apparently. Certainly when you see them in the autumn, unlike most of the booted, they tend to have this pinky, brown or gingery hue in this area. Another good feature for Sykeses. Can you see it there? Lovely pinky gingery brown hue and the super that doesn't go far enough and the kind of silly long bill. And that's a Sykeses warbler. And that's a Sykeses warbler. And I want to find one on my patch.